on Restoration England. So we've only just started the course. If you've looked at the last couple of lessons, we've been looking at kind of the background to this time period, what's happening with poor old Charles I, what's happening in that time period where England doesn't have a king. And we were looking at how very, very quickly England goes from not wanting a king, executing their king, to realizing that actually the grass isn't always greener, and ending up with the sort of Oliver Cromwell figure who's king in all but name. So he's Lord Protector, but in all other essence, he is a king, to the point that when he dies, his eldest son becomes in charge of the country afterwards. And then we end up with this kind of power vacuum where England's not quite sure where they're going. And Charles II, as he's going to be, sees a bit of an opening. And so one way he makes use of this is by issuing the Declaration of Breda. So that's what we're going to look at this lesson. So a declaration is just something you say publicly. So like a public saying, and Breda is the place where he is. Okay, so Declaration of Breda, fancy name for something really straightforward. Don't let that throw you. So we're in April 1660. Nice, easy number to remember. So 1660. We're in April. Charles is in exile in the Netherlands. So remember, he's not king yet. So he was raised as a prince, fully expecting to be the next king. Then the Civil War happens. So the younger Charles has been hanging out around Europe. He's been in France, remember, at the court of his cousin, learning the French style of ruling. At the moment, he's in the Netherlands, so nice and close to England. He's got a kind of sense of what might be happening, that there might be a chance to get England back. So he's in the Netherlands, in Breda, and he wants to be king. It's his rightful destiny. He was always going to be king in his head. So he feels his throne has been stolen from him, and he wants to become Charles II. And who can blame him? So he issues the Declaration of Breda, and in simple terms, it's a deal with the English people and Parliament to win their support. It's his kind of pitch for being king. If you make me king, here's what I'll do for you in return. And that's actually a really unusual thing for a king at this time to be doing. So up until this point, it's been very much, I am king, you do what I say. And that's part of the issue his father had, Charles I, was he was very much, but I'm king. Charles II is a lot more ready to make compromises. So he's like, look, make me king. This is what I'll give you. So we're going to run through the main things that he promises. So I'll let you know what they are. But then I want you to think, why? What is Charles II getting out of these promises? Because the promises are really interesting. It's all the things that really matter at this time. So the first thing he offers the people is forgiveness. So he promises to pardon or forgive most people who'd fought against his father in the Civil War. So I've said most people, there are 59 people he will not be pardoning. So just have a think to yourself, who are these 59 people? So he says, I'm going to pardon most people, not these 59. If you were thinking the people who signed his father's execution warrant, you were absolutely right. So there are 59 people who signed his death notice. Charles is like, you guys are in the firing line. I'm not forgiving you, but everybody else. So just think to yourself, why? Well done if you said it's to make people feel safe without worrying that they'd be punished or he'd hold it against them. So if you remember the English Civil War, Parliament versus the King, most people will come on one side or the other. So the really rich landowners, the people with things to lose, about half of them were against his father. So they're going to be really worried. So they hear that Charles II might be coming. Their first thought is going to be like, oh my goodness, we fought against his father. Is he going to hold that against us? So what Charles the Younger, Charles II, says is, look, if you were on the side of Parliament in the Civil War, so be it. We'll draw a line under it. We'll forget it. So there'll be no punishment. There also won't be like unfair treatment. I'm not going to hold it against you as long as you're not those 59 that ordered the execution. And that is going to take a weight off so many people's minds because that would be a massive sticking point for them. Next up is religion. So he says people would have freedom of conscience in religion. So conscience is your idea of right and wrong. So it's a fancy way of saying you can worship in your own way. So at this time, there are loads of different Christian groups coming out at this time. So we've got the Protestants, we've got the Puritans, we've also got less known groups like the Diggers, the Levellers, the Adamites. There's loads coming out, and mainly it's because of Henry VIII and the break with Rome. Lots of people are like, well, if Henry VIII can start his own religion, so can we. There are some things that are done that we don't agree with. We'll set up our own version of Christianity and worship in the way we want. And so Charles is saying, have at it. You do that. So why? Why is that such a sensible thing to suggest at this time period? Yes, again, well done, everyone who remembered. England had been really divided over religion, that battle between Catholic and Protestant. So remember, Charles's grandfather, James I, had enormous problems. We've got Guy Fawkes, the gunpowder plot with the Catholics. Charles I had caused lots of concern. Remember, his queen, Henrietta Maria, Charles II's mother, is a Catholic, and she was allowed to keep worshipping in the Catholic way. Lots of people didn't like that. Charles is just trying to calm things down. He's trying to avoid angering groups. So everyone is going to have the freedom to worship in their way. Property. So land and property taken during the Civil War and then later under Cromwell would be respected. So previous kings and queens where there'd been kind of issues around this had often come in and been like, right, we're going to go back to who owned the land 10 years ago. Charles is like, absolutely not. If you own land right now, no one's going to take it off you and give it to the previous owners. So again, just think to yourself, why? So again, it's very similar to the first one. There are a lot of very powerful people who'd gained land. And Charles wants to stop them, fearing they'd lose it if he'd returned. So Charles and his advisors are being really clever here. So they're sitting down and going, okay, imagine you were someone in England. What reasons might you have for not wanting me back? So they've come up with, what if we fought against your father in the war? They've come up with, what if I've just taken property? I've been given property by Cromwell. Are you going to take it off? And Charles is sort of preempting them. So he's thinking of all the reasons you wouldn't want him and being like, if you're thinking this, don't worry because it's not going to happen. Very, very clever. Next one, army pay. So the soldiers who had fought for Parliament on Parliament's side, the sort of standing army in England at the time, he was like, I'm going to keep paying you wages. So last one. Remember for the examiners, we need to spell it out. So even though it might be obvious to us, you do need to spell it out. A really useful phrase is this meant that. So he promises to pay the soldiers. This meant that. So the army was still very, very strong. This is his way of keeping them on his side. So when he goes back, he knows the army are going to be like, I fully support Charles because he's going to pay us. So the Declaration of Breda, Charles's way of being like, you really want me back as a king, don't you? Look at all the nice things I'm going to do. And people agreed with him. So why is this declaration so important? It shows Charles was willing to compromise. And like I said earlier, that's not a given from kings at this time period. One of the big issues England had with Charles I was he was so stubborn and would not listen. So Charles's way even if it's subconsciously, Charles II's way of being like, look, I'm going to compromise. I'm not as stubborn as my father. I'm going to make allowances. It reassured all of those different groups, former enemies, landowners, religious groups, soldiers, that they are going to be safe under him. His rule is going to be a safe place for them. And finally, it helped Parliament invite him back, because that was awkward, wasn't it? So they've gone in 11 years from like, we're killing the king, to like, hello, Charles II, would you like to come and be our king? It's awkward. But this really helps. Charles is reaching out to them, going, should we just draw a line under it and I'll be king? And they're like, oh, goodness, yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that. And that leads to the restoration of the monarchy in 1660. So monarchy is just the king, kings and queens. Restoration, remember, if you restore something, you bring it back to how it was. So that is why this is called the Restoration period. So Charles II is now back on the throne. England's got a king again, and we're going to see next lesson what he does.